So, I used to send new clients a 12-page intake packet, and half of them never filled it out. Here's what actually works with coaching forms. Use fewer forms, make each one earn its place, and tie every single form to a specific moment in your client journey. That's the difference between forms that help your coaching and forms that just feel like homework. In this video, I'll walk you through the coaching forms that matter most and how to use them without overwhelming your clients. I'll also share the one-form strategy that completely changed how I onboard new clients. But that strategy is not what you'd expect, so I'm saving it for later. When I started coaching, I thought forms were just admin busy work, and I was completely wrong. The first reason coaching forms matter? They create a better client experience. When a new client fills out an intake form before your first session, you already know their goals and what they've tried before. You start the real coaching from minute one. Clients notice that immediately, and trust builds faster than any icebreaker exercise. The second reason forms matter is they save you a shocking amount of time. Think about how many emails you send asking clients for updates or gathering information for the next session. A well-placed form replaces most of those emails. I used to spend hours each week on back-and-forth messages that a simple check-in form would have handled in 2 minutes. And the third reason, this one surprised me, is that forms get more honest answers than conversations do. Some clients find it easier to write down what they're really feeling than say it out loud. I've had clients share things on a written form that they told me they never would have said face to face. That honesty changes everything about the quality of your coaching. So forms aren't admin, they're a coaching tool. But most coaches either skip them entirely or go overboard. And both mistakes cost you clients. The first category of coaching forms is your intake and onboarding forms, and these are the ones you cannot skip. Your intake form is the foundation of your entire client relationship. It tells you who this person is, what they want, and what's already been tried. A solid intake form covers 3 things. The first thing is background information, not their entire life story, but enough context to understand where they're starting. The second thing is their specific goals, written in their own words. And the third thing? What they've already tried. That last one is gold, because it keeps you from suggesting something they've already failed at, which would destroy their trust before you even start. I keep my intake form inside Paperbell, so it goes out automatically the moment someone books their first session. No chasing, no reminding. They book, they get the form, and by the time we sit down, I already know what we're working with. Beyond the intake form, you want an onboarding checklist, a simple document that tells the client what to expect, how often you'll meet, how communication works between sessions, what your cancellation policy is. This isn't a contract, it's more like a welcome guide, and it eliminates about 80% of those early, quick question emails that eat your time. But getting the right information up front is only half the battle. The other half, knowing whether your coaching is actually working, and that requires a completely different kind of form. The second category is assessment and evaluation forms, and this is where most coaches have a blind spot. We're great at planning sessions, but terrible at measuring whether those sessions are doing anything. A session evaluation form doesn't need to be complicated. 5 or 6 questions after a session. What was your biggest insight? What felt unclear? What will you do before next time? That's genuinely all you need. But that simple feedback loop gives you the ability to adjust in real time, instead of guessing whether your approach is landing. I started using a brief check-in form between sessions. Just 3 questions a client answers 2 days before we meet. What progress did you make? What got in the way? And what do you want to focus on next time? The answers transformed how I prepare because I walk in knowing exactly where my client is instead of spending the first 10 minutes on a verbal check-in. Those 10 minutes, multiplied across every client every week, add up to hours of coaching time you're currently wasting. Then there's the wrap-up evaluation, the form you send when a client finishes their package. This one serves double duty because it gives you honest feedback about the overall experience and it generates testimonials if you ask the right questions. Something like, "What would you tell a friend who was considering coaching?" gets you real language from a real client, and that language is worth more than anything you'd write yourself for your website. So that's intake forms to start strong and evaluation forms to stay sharp. But there's a third category most coaches completely overlook. And this is where your business either runs smoothly or falls apart behind the scenes. The third category is your business and legal forms. And I know this is the least exciting part of coaching, but skipping these is how coaches end up in messy situations. Disputes about payment, confusion about what's included, or liability issues that a simple agreement could have prevented. The first business form you need is a coaching agreement or contract. It doesn't need to be written by a lawyer, but it needs to spell out what you're providing, what it costs, and what the refund policy is. I learned this the hard way when a client wanted a full refund after 3 sessions because they expected something different. A clear agreement up front would have made that conversation 5 minutes instead of 5 stressful emails. The second business form is a consent form, especially if you're doing health coaching, wellness coaching, or anything adjacent to mental health. This clarifies that you're a coach, not a therapist, and it protects both sides. Even life coaches should have some version of this because the line between coaching and therapy gets blurry fast. And the third business form? A simple payment record. Even if you're using a tool that handles payments automatically, you want a paper trail. I handle this through Paperbell, which tracks every payment and sends receipts automatically. But whatever system you use, payment records need to exist and be organized. Now, remember at the beginning I mentioned a form strategy that completely changed my onboarding? This is it, and it's probably not what you expected. The insight that changed my coaching forms wasn't about adding more forms. It was about removing them. I went from that bloated 12-page intake packet to exactly 3 forms, and my completion rate went from about half to nearly every single client. Every form you send is a decision point, a moment where your client has to choose to keep engaging or put it off until later. And later usually means never. So each form needs to earn its spot by serving a clear purpose that the client can fill, not just one that makes sense to you internally. My 3 forms are an intake questionnaire before the first session, a brief check-in before every other session, and a wrap-up evaluation at the end. Each one takes under 5 minutes. No lengthy assessments, no redundant questions, and no form that exists just because you saw it on a template list somewhere. The other piece is branding. Your forms should look and feel like your coaching practice. Your colors, your logo, your voice. A generic Google Doc sends a completely different message than a form that feels like a natural extension of working with you. And the last part, go digital. Paper forms, PDFs, you email back and forth, anything that requires printing, all of that friction kills completion rates. I have my forms built right into Paperbell so they're part of the booking and session flow, and clients fill them out on their phone while they're thinking about it. So those are the core principles, but the specific forms you need will vary depending on what kind of coaching you do. And this is where most template lists fail you. They give you 19 forms and tell you to use all of them. That's exactly how you end up with that overwhelming intake packet nobody fills out. If you're a life coach, your intake form should focus on values, life satisfaction, and what success looks like in the client's own words. Your evaluation forms track subjective progress because the transformation in life coaching is often internal and hard to measure with numbers. If you're a health or wellness coach, your forms need medical history, current habits, and measurable health goals. You also need that detailed consent form I mentioned because you're working adjacent to medical territory. If you're a business coach, your intake should capture current revenue, business model, and specific growth targets. Your evaluation forms track business metrics alongside mindset shifts, because business coaching lives at the intersection of strategy and psychology. And if you're a relationship or couples coach, Your intake process needs both partners' perspectives separately before the first joint session. Couples' intake forms are one of the few cases where a longer form is justified. Understanding both sides of the dynamic before you walk into that room can make or break the engagement. The point is that your coaching forms should reflect how you actually coach. Start with the 3-form foundation I described, then add only what your niche genuinely requires. So let's bring this full circle. Coaching forms aren't paperwork. They're the invisible structure that makes your coaching better and your business easier to run. Use fewer forms with clearer purpose. Tie each one to a specific moment in the client journey. Brand them so they feel like you're coaching, and go digital so clients actually complete them. If you want to set this up today, I use Paperbell. It handles intake forms, scheduling, payments, and client management all in one place, and you can try it free with your first client. Links in the description.